In ancient history, a very few narratives are as significant as the history of ancient Rome. It had a history spanning over a millennium, from the establishment of Rome in the 8th century BC to the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. Located on the Italian peninsula along the Tiber River, ancient Rome first appeared as a settlement around the 8th century BC. Rome progressively expanded its power through a combination of military conquest and diplomatic planning, ultimately taking control of the Italian peninsula and absorbing the cultures of its surrounding regions. At its height of strength, Rome ruled over large portions of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, in addition to the Mediterranean region. One of the biggest and longest-lasting empires in antiquity, its territory covered more than 5 million square kilometers, and its population was counted in dozens of millions. Rome's political system changed along with its territorial expansion, going from monarchy to a classic republic, and then to an empire. This process, which was characterized by a slow breakdown of republican institutions, cleared the way for the establishment of imperial rule under leaders like Augustus and Julius Caesar. The cultural legacy of ancient Rome goes well beyond its annexation of new lands. Rome's civilization has had a profound influence on modern language, religion, society, technology, law, politics, art, literature, architecture, and engineering. The establishment of a republican form of government, the organization of the military, and the building of aqueducts, roads, and colossal structures that bear witness to ancient Rome's engineering prowess are among its major accomplishments. Rome's mythical founding in 753 BC, as well as tales of legendary characters like Romulus and Remus, wrap around the city's origin. Even though they have been enriched over time, these stories illustrate Rome's outstanding beginning and eventual ascent to power. The calendar system, the Western alphabet, and the geographic distribution of Roman languages all bear witness to the long-lasting influence of Roman civilization on Western culture, even in the face of Rome's final collapse and fall. A time of great intellectual, artistic, and philosophical achievements that established the groundwork for Western civilization, classical antiquity is commonly used to describe the period encompassing ancient Rome and ancient Greece. Because it was a civilization that emerged from modest beginnings and shaped world history, ancient Rome is remembered in history as one of the most powerful empires. Beginning as a small settlement on the Tiber River, ancient Rome's journey began around the 8th century BC. Roman mythology and history place great importance on Alba Longa, an ancient city located in the Alban hills of central Italy, close to Lake Albano. According to the legend, Alba Longa was the birthplace of Romulus and Remus, the mythical twin founders of Rome. They were also members of the royal dynasty of Alba Longa. But Alba Longa was supposedly destroyed by the expanding Roman kingdom in the middle of the 7th century BC. After that, people were forced to relocate and settle in Rome, assimilating into the local culture. Alba Longa played a significant cultural and historical role in the formation of the ancient Roman Republic. As the ancient historian Livy suggests when he claims that many notable Roman patrician families traced their origins back to Alba Longa. The story says that King Numitor ruled the ancient city of Alba Longa with kindness and generosity, hoping for harmony and prosperity among his subjects. But the hostility of his younger brother, Amulius, driven by ambition and jealousy, shook the peace. Driven by a desire for power, Amulius planned a violent coup in which he killed Numitor's son and imprisoned Princess Rhea Silvia, his daughter. After Numitor was banished for failing to stop Amulius' tyranny, Amulius took the throne. Alba Longa lived in hopelessness for years until a whisper of Princess Rhea Silvia's escape, facilitated by a mysterious warrior, began to spread. Her fate was still unknown though. One of the best-known legends in ancient history said that two brothers, Romulus and Remus, were abandoned in a basket in the Tiber River. The legend describes the adventure of twin brothers who were born to the Rhea Silvia and the descendants of the uprooted king Numitor. The brothers' destiny prepared the way for the Rome's founding and subsequent rise to power. The myth states that Romulus and Remus had an uncertain future from birth because King was afraid of them becoming rivals to him. A female wolf eventually found the twins after the basket got caught in the roots of a tree on the riverbank. Once again, fate intervened when a passing visitor named Faustulus found the infants and decided to rescue them from the wilderness. Faustulus, deeply affected by the children's story, chose to hide the truth from everyone and raised Romulus and Remus as their own children. These kids had an inheritance linked to the Rome's destiny, even though they were unaware of it. Romulus and Remus developed into skilled shepherds and hunters as they grew older. As the brothers grew older, they learned of their royal ancestry and made efforts to recover their rightful inheritance. Along the way, they encountered many difficulties, such as Remus' imprisonment and Romulus' cunning plan to secure their freedom. Joined by a common destiny, they overcome challenges and set out on a quest to build a city that would endure for all eternity. However, there were conflicts with their vision. A tragic dispute over the location of Rome's foundation resulted in Remus' death at the hands of either his brother or his supporters. A dispute broke out, and Remus was tragically killed by his brother. Overwhelmed by sorrow and remorse, Romulus struggled but was also inspired to realize a common goal, the establishment of a new city, Rome. The story of Romulus and Remus is a fundamental part of the founding and early history of ancient Rome in ancient Roman mythology. Generations have been fascinated by the tale of Romulus and Remus, which provides an understanding of Rome's moral principles and cultural identity. The famous images of Romulus and Remus can be found on everything from ancient coins to medieval artwork. They serve as a constant reminder of the enduring influence of myth and legend in forming our perception of the past, regardless of how questionable and inaccurate it is. Rome arose as a ray of hope, squeezed along the Tiber River between the seven hills. Rome grew up in a multicultural environment that was influenced by Etruscans, Greeks, indigenous Italian peoples, and many other cultures it eventually conquered through its history. The Seven Kings of Rome era is regarded as a foundational period, disguised in a myth and legend, but signifying the initial steps of a civilization headed for its future glory. The capacity to establish a resemblance to a kingdom initially surfaced under the Roman monarchs. Over the course of more than 2 centuries in power, these kings made individual contributions to Rome's development. Romulus is credited with founding Rome in the 8th century BC. According to another legend, At its early period, Rome faced a serious problem. There weren't enough women to support the majority of its male population, despite its impressive military might and quick expansion. During one festival, Romulus came up with a daring plan after failing to arrange marriages through alliances with nearby tribes. He invited neighboring tribes, including the Sabines. Roman men took advantage of Romulus' gesture by kidnapping Sabine maidens, mostly virgins, in an attempt to rectify Rome's demographic imbalance. The Sabines wanted revenge for the kidnapping of their woman, so this act set off a war. The Sabine women, who were now married to Roman men, intervened to stop the bloodshed despite the initial hostilities. They pleaded with their husbands, fathers and brothers to put an end to the war. Inspired by their pleading, the Romans and Sabines came to a peace treaty that brought the two peoples together under Roman rule. The historical accuracy of the abduction of Sabine women is a topic of debate among historians. However, it remains a fundamental myth in Rome's legendary history, illustrating themes of alliance, conquest, and the creation of a unified community, but also ruthless methods used against other cultures. The legendary founder, Romulus, is credited with creating the framework for Rome's growth. Under the rule of Numa Pompilius, there was a period of calm and pious times, which established a model for Rome's spiritual growth. Rome's rule over surrounding lands was solidified by Tullius Hostilius through conquest and destruction, and by Ancus Marcius, who expanded the city's borders and strengthened its infrastructure with important buildings like ports and bridges. Unknown in origin, Tarquinius Priscus brought bold engineering projects and cultural innovations. Unmatched in his determination, Servius Tullius implemented social and political changes that strengthened Rome's defenses and established the foundation of its republican institutions. The last king, Tarquinius Superbus, pushed Rome towards imperial greatness but ultimately perished in his own tyranny, which brought in the Roman Republic. Every monarch independently played a part in Rome's unstoppable advance towards his destiny, establishing the groundwork for the eventual establishment and prosperity of the Republic. Even though their legacies are shrouded in legend and exaggeration, they stand as an illustration of Rome's perseverance and aspirations. Even though the Romans were their well-known neighbors, the Etruscans were a civilization of great importance, especially in influencing Rome's early development. This chapter examines the various ways in which the Etruscans influenced Roman society, from culture and architecture to politics and religion. Many theories have been proposed by both ancient and contemporary scholars regarding the origins of the Etruscans. Probably around the 10th century BC, their civilization split off from the Proto-Villanovan culture. The entire Villanovan culture emerged by the 900 BC, which is around the time when Etruscan civilization became an important factor in the region. Contact with Greek and Phoenician sailors increased around the 8th century BC. This resulted in cultural exchanges and the Etruscans' adoption of the Greek alphabet. Etruscan cities developed during the Greeks' colonization of the southern Italy, so they also became rivals and trading partners. early Rome was greatly influenced politically by the Etruscans, whose kings governed the city in its early years. Traditionally, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus is named as Rome's fifth king. He is followed by another Etruscan, Servius Tullius. It was during their reigns that Rome became a strong city-state. The architecture of Rome was profoundly influenced by the Etruscans' proficiency in architecture and engineering. The Romans borrowed many Etruscan technologies, including engineering and temple architecture. Rome's sewer system, the Cloaca Maxima, is credited to Etruscan King Priscus. Roman temple architecture was influenced by Etruscan temples, which had deep porches and raised podiums. Because of its strength, the Tuscan column, which originated from the Etruscan adaptation of the Doric column, became widely used in Roman architecture. The enduring influence of Etruscan architecture is highlighted by the archaeological evidence indicating the Etruscan origins of many early Roman buildings. Roman civilization adopted Etruscan cultural customs, such as writing and dress codes. The toga, an iconic piece of Roman clothing, is thought to have originated from Etruscan clothing. An Etruscan alphabet was adopted for the use in the development of Latin script. Roman religious practices included elements of Etruscan religion, such as the worship of Uni and Minerva, and rituals like liver divination. Even the gladiatorial games, which originated from Etruscan funeral customs, rose in popularity in Roman entertainment. The Etruscans were important in determining the course of ancient Rome because of their advanced technological innovations and a rich cultural legacy. Their influence extended throughout all aspects of Roman life, from the halls of power to the city streets, leaving an important legacy in the history of Rome. The battle for dominance in early Rome was a story of ambition, deceit, and legacy for the later Roman generations. Although the mythology surrounding Rome's early years placed quite a bit of attention on a legendary founder Romulus, his mythological reign actually served as a warm-up for the noxious power struggles that followed. The political, military, and social institutions of Rome are said to have been founded by Romulus, despite disagreements over whether he was a historical figure or only a myth. The boundaries between history and legend were briefly blurred by his supposed co-ruler, the Sabine Titus Statius. Even though their names are known to us, the reigns of the kings that followed are mysterious, clouded by the flow of time and the additions made by later historians. A period of peace was brought in by Numa Pompilius, the Sabine heir to Romulus, who gained popularity by his alleged innovations in religion. His successor, Tullius Hostilius, lived up to his name as a warrior fighting battles. Numa's grandson, Ancus Marcius, united religion and warfare to form his rule through a combination of military might and religious adoration. Despite the unclear boundaries between legends and history, archaeological evidence provides a window into a more concrete past. During this time, the streets and the environment of Rome were permanently changed by the Etruscan and Greek cultures as it grew into a thriving metropolis. Rome was transformed into a city of wealth and ambition under the leadership of our last three kings, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, Servius Tullius, and Lucius Tarquinius Superbus. Their Etruscan ancestry together with Rome's advantageous location and growing significance, set the stage for a new era in its history. The seventh and the last king of Rome, Lucius Tarquinius, or Tarquin the Proud, is a controversial figure in Roman history that was characterized by tyranny, ambition, and ultimate downfall. As the seventh and final king of Rome, his reign spanned 25 years until a popular uprising led to the establishment of the Roman Republic. Tarquin's rise was marked by violence and intrigue. Tarquin is said to be the son or grandson of Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, the fifth king of Rome. Tarquin's route to the throne was marked by bloodshed as he killed his wife, his older brother, and his predecessor, Servius Tullius. His reign has been portrayed as a cruel tyranny that provided justification for the dissolution of the monarchy. Raised in a family known for its cunning and ambition, Tarquin's mother, Tanaquil, was important in arranging his rise to power. Tarquin took the throne by forming smart alliances and using brutal tactics to take advantage of the divisions within the lower classes and win over the elites. Roman history underwent a major change when Tarquin's predecessor, Servius Tullius, was overthrown. Tarquin's wife, Tullia, was crucial in her husband's rise to power, which resulted in a violent uprising that killed a king and strengthened Tarquin's hold on power. The consolidation of power and expansionist aspirations defined Tarquin's reign. He aimed to establish Rome's supremacy over its rivals and neighbors through military conquest and political maneuvering. However, many Roman citizens were alienated by his harsh and oppressive rule. Rome became a republic in 509 BC when the people rebelled against the tyrannical Etruscan king Tarquinius. Formerly serving as a monarch advisory body, the Roman Senate decided that Rome should never again have a king. The Roman Republic, an aristocratic form of government presided over by the Senate and yearly elected magistrates such as consuls, was established at this critical point in time. The first 6 kings of Rome were mostly described as kind leaders. However, during the reign of the 7th king, Tarquin, it is said that Lucretia, a noble woman of great virtue, was raped by the king's son, which resulted in a massive rebellion against the dynasty and the downfall of King Tarquinius and his harsh reign. The following rebellion against the tyrant indicated a change from monarchy to republic. Tarquin's downfall is a story of defiance and treason. He launched disastrous campaigns against Rome's enemies in response to mounting unhappiness and resistance, only to experience crushing losses and failures. After his last attempt to take back the throne was unsuccessful, he was banished and died in 495. Lucius Tarquinius the Proud left behind the unsettling and mysterious legacy. Some may see him as a visionary leader whose ambitions changed the course of Roman history, while others may see him as a brutal tyrant whose reign symbolized the abuses of monarchy. During the early Republic, social and political conflicts took place. The evidence of the social structure of early Rome is quite confusing, and at first it seems like the plebeians were in charge, but through agitation and conflict, the patricians acquired benefits and eventually achieved legal equality. Despite having ancient roots, the division between patricians and plebeians developed gradually during this time. In the conflict of the orders, the establishment of the plebeian tribunate in 494 BC was an important turning point. These tribunes, represented as defenders of the common people, were powerful figures who fought for plebeian rights and undermined magistrate power. The Law of 12 Tables, the first systematic codification of Roman law, was enacted around 450 BC, was another significant development. Despite its enigmatic beginning, the 12 Tables served as the foundation for Roman private law covering debt, property rights, and the other civil issues. Rome's growing military and administrative requirements were reflected in the establishment of military tribunes with consular authority in 445 BC. This innovation stimulated social unity and political stability by enabling both patricians and plebeians to hold positions of power. Rome saw social and economic transformation during the early Republic, including legislation related to land distribution and debt relief. Legal changes intended to increase access to justice and economic power served as highlights of the city's economic progress. Rome's power grew within Latium and beyond, becoming a dominant force in central Italy, facing external threats and internal reforms. Rome emerged as an important part of the Latin League, a confederation of Latin states that modeled cooperation in law, religion, and warfare. Rome created the conditions for its future greatness by managing through military conflicts and turmoil in politics during the early Republic, which in turn paved the way for the rise of one of the most powerful civilizations in history. An important victory against the Senones, a Gallic tribe led by their leader Brennus during the Battle of Allia, which took place around 387 BC, is remembered as an important chapter in the Roman Republic period. This battle, which took place at a meeting point of the Tiber River and Allia Brook, led the Roman armies being routed and the triumphant Senones taking control of Rome. The complex connections that existed between Etruscan cities, Gallic tribes, and Roman diplomats set a stage for this conflict. A battle broke out between the Senones, who had invaded northern Italy recently, and the Etruscan city of Clusium because of animosity and territorial claims. Rome, who was serving as a mediator, dispatched envoys to negotiate truce. This mission ended in bad terms, and all of a sudden, Rome was drawn into the war. The Roman forces were unprepared and abruptly assembled when the Battle of Allia actually took place. Taking advantage of the situation, the Gauls attacked with speed and decisiveness, overwhelming the Roman lines and forcing them into a furious retreat. The extent of the defeat was such that many Romans were killed or drowned in their attempt to escape. Those who survived fled to Veii, a nearby city, or even returned to Rome. Roman society was shaken by the aftermath of the Battle of Allia, which resulted in a time of fear and uncertainty, while the Gauls plundered and pillaged Rome. However, this battle was only one of a nearly 4-century-long string of clashes between Rome and other Gallic tribes. Rome and Gallic cultures clashed in the following years, inside Italy and outside the Alps. The power struggles and ongoing tensions between Rome and the Gallic world are displayed by these conflicts, which have been documented in ancient sources. These battles, which spanned from the first Gallic tribe invasions into Italy to Caesar's conquest of Gaul, influenced the development of Roman history, but eventually helped the Roman Republic spread throughout Western Europe. Rome encountered strong opposition from Gallic tribes, eager to challenge Roman rule as it attempted to establish its dominance over Italy and beyond. However, Rome eventually prevailed and established its dominance over a large portion of the known world through military might and cunning diplomacy. Conflicts known as the Samnite Wars began as a result of tensions that broke out following Rome's territorial expansion, especially the annexation of Campania. Once scattered tribes living in the central and southern Apennines, the Samnites came together in opposition to Roman intrusion and posed a serious threat to Roman rule. The rough and merciless terrain reflected the resolve of Samnite warriors, requiring Rome to employ creative military tactics that would be crucial to its subsequent conquests in the Mediterranean. Despite being short-lived, the First Samnite War gave Rome an enormous increase in territory. Rome's strength and manpower increased when it acquired Campania with its capital city of Capua through a series of alliances and conflicts. It may have been the first time a weaker state that was already at war invited Rome to form an alliance. This would be the pattern with other regions, but the Latins' opposition to Roman supremacy was sparked by this expansion, which resulted in the Latin War. Almost all of Latium was absorbed into Roman territory as a result of Rome's overwhelming victory in this war, though some towns continued to exist as allies in wartime. A major change in the balance of power in the region was brought about by the dissolution of the Latin League, which solidified Rome's grasp over central Italy. Rome's conquest and colonization efforts continued after it had established control over central Italy. This resulted in a conflict with the Samnites living in the middle Liris River valley, which marked the beginning of the Second Samnite War. Rome first experienced difficulties, such as an embarrassing loss at the Caudine Forks in 321 BC, but turning point was reached when Rome adopted a flexible military system modeled after Samnite tactics. For centuries to come, this system, which was distinguished by its ability to adapt to difficult terrain, formed the basis of Roman military strategy. Rome completed important infrastructural projects during the wars, including building military routes like the Via Appia. Rome's power was further increased by the establishment of colonies. Rome's third treaty in Carthage in 306 BC marked the end of this war and established Rome's supremacy over Italy. Internal conflicts did not go away though, with the lower classes urging for reform and transformation of the ruling class, known as the Optimates, defending traditional values and Senate supremacy. The last battle the Samnites made against Roman expansionism took place during the Third Samnite War. The Samnites, who were desperate to stay independent, banded together with the Etruscans, Umbrians and Gauls in an attempt to take down Rome's control. But Rome, by now a seasoned warrior state, took off this powerful coalition head-on and won the key battle of Sentinum in 295 BC. The coalition's power was destroyed by the loss, and Rome had to spend the rest of the war crushing any remaining Samnite resistance. Rome's hegemony over central Italy became permanent when the Samnites and their allies were essentially forced to form an alliance with Rome as a result of the war. Rome's triumph laid the groundwork for its subsequent conquests and imperial aspirations by solidifying its position as the leading force in the area and extending its influence. Rome's entry into a phase of expansion and consolidation foreshadows the eventual internal conflicts and the creation of new power structures within the city-state. After the three Samnite Wars ended in 290 BC, Rome had established its supremacy over parts of central and southern Italy. A number of alliances with central Italian tribes served to further solidify this dominance. The Greek city-states to the south were still outside of Rome's sphere of influence. Tarentum was the most well-known and powerful of them all, but when Tarentum attacked a Roman fleet close to its coast, tensions increased and Rome declared a war. Before the Punic War, which caused Rome's final phases of the Italian conquest and its confrontation with the Greek city of Tarentum in southern Italy, Greek historians paid little attention to Rome. During the 280s BC, Rome focused on suppressing unrest in northern Italy, but soon after, a conflict between a Samnite tribe and the Greek city of Turi brought Rome and Tarentum into conflict, causing attention to shift south. Tarentum searched for assistance from the well-known Greek general King Pyrrhus of Epirus, who was renowned for his military skills. 280 BC, Pyrrhus brought a powerful army, including war elephants and well-trained soldiers, to southern Italy. He suffered heavy losses in his early battles against the Romans, but he also won notable victories at Heraclea and Asculum. His expensive victories are where the phrase Punic Wars originated, as Greeks suffered heavy losses. Rome persisted in the face of early defeats and eventually defeated Pyrrhus at Beneventum in 275 BC. Pyrrhus' departure cemented Rome's supremacy over Italy. Central Italy was covered by Roman territory, and the peninsula was home to numerous Latin colonies. Through alliances, other Italian ethnic groups were obligated to Rome and provided armed assistance when required. The Roman elite and people developed strong military ethics as a result of the conquest of Italy, which gave Rome plenty of manpower and made the creation of governmental, military, and legal structures necessary to manage a diverse population. Rome's ability to use its citizen army to defeat professional Mediterranean mercenaries was demonstrated during the Punic Wars. Rome's growing authority also resulted in wars with non-Italian states, especially Carthage. The Punic Wars originated from Rome's breach of treaty pertaining to Sicily's sphere of influence with Carthage. Sicily and Sicilian Straits were strategically significant, which led Rome to expand its navy and confront Carthage. Rome's intervention in Sicily marked the first phase of the Punic Wars and set off an extended conflict with Carthage. Rome's naval proficiency was proven by its victory at Mylae in 260 BC, despite early defeats. However, Marcus Atilius Regulus' risky expedition to Africa in 256 BC proved to be unsuccessful. The ongoing conflict in Sicily resulted in Carthage's loss at the Aegean Islands in 241 BC. Carthage was forced to leave Sicily and pay reparations as part of the resulting peace settlement, but it maintained its right to remain independent. Beneath Hamilcar Barca and later his son Hannibal, Carthage grew its empire in Spain during this time. Despite Roman objections, Hannibal's siege of Saguntum in 219 BC set off the Second Punic War. Rome was shaken but not defeated by Hannibal's daring invasion of northern Italy and his conquests at Trebia, Tresmene, and Cannae. Hannibal's plans were stopped by Rome's defensive tactics, internal revolts in Italy, and alliances in the east. When Scipio Africanus emerged and defeated Hannibal in Africa at the Battle of Zama, Rome's fortunes changed. Rome established its dominance in the Mediterranean by imposing territorial limitation on Carthage while maintaining its integrity in the ensuing peace treaty. Rome's fate was altered, and its rule over the region was solidified by the Punic Wars. Rome's rise to heights in the Mediterranean was marked by the fall of Hellenistic monarchies and the defeat of Carthage. These wars had a profound impact on Rome's political, social, economic, and religious domains, irrevocably altering the course of ancient history itself. The turning point in Roman history, the Punic Wars between the Rome and Carthage, shaped the Republic's course towards imperial rule and Mediterranean domination. These wars included 3 major wars and other uprisings and conflicts, as they were characterized by extended land and naval battles that resulted in heavy casualties for both sides. Carthage, with its superior navy, faced off against Rome, a rising land power with no great navy whatsoever. After a long 23-year struggle, the Romans emerged victorious, annexing Sicily and igniting the mercenary war inside the Carthaginian territory. The conflict broke out in 264 BC when the city of Messana, looking for support against Hero II of Syracuse, turned to Carthage. Rome, concerned about the Carthaginians' proximity to the recently conquered Greek cities in southern Italy, intervened to drive them out. The Republic of Rome endured through more than 2 decades of war, eventually defeating Carthage and securing Sicily in spite of Rome's lack of naval experience. The First Punic War was primarily fought for control of the Mediterranean island of Sicily. Rome besieged Carthage's stronghold at Acragas on the south coast and formed an alliance with Syracuse, one of the island's major independent powers. In 262, a sizable Carthaginian army made an attempt to break the siege, but lost severely. With Carthaginian forces concentrated on defending their fortified coastal towns and the Romans lacking naval experience, the land war on Sicily came to a standstill. The war's emphasis then shifted to naval operations, where the Romans created a strong navy to oppose Carthage in spite of their initial lack of experience. At important battles like Mylae and Sulci, they emerged victorious. At the Battle of Cape Economus, the Rome stopped the Carthaginian invasion of North Africa in 256 BC. Despite their early victories, the Romans lost badly at the Battle of Tunis in 255 BC, and on the way back, the majority of their fleet was destroyed in a storm. After the defeat in Africa, neither side was able to seize the initiative. In 255, Carthaginian forces took back Acragas, but they quickly left it behind. Naval battles resumed after the Romans rebuilt their fleet. An important turning point in the war occurred when the Romans repulsed a Carthaginian attack on Panormus, modern-day Palermo, in 250 BC. As they gradually took over most of Sicily, the Romans besieged Carthaginian strongholds like Lalabium and Drepana. The Romans attempted several times to breach the heavily guarded walls of Lalabium, but they were unsuccessful, and the siege lasted for 9 years. At the Battle of Drepana, Carthage scored an impressive naval victory, but Roman naval presence caused them to suffer losses. Both Rome and Carthage were economically and demographically exhausted by the 243 BC. By using loans from wealthy citizens, Rome was able to rebuild its fleet and blockade Carthaginian garrisons. At the Battle of the Aegae's Islands in 241 BC, the Romans soundly defeated the Carthaginian fleet, compelling Carthage to engage in peace talks. Carthage was forced to pay reparations and give up Sicily as a Rome province in the Treaty of Lutatius that followed. A revolt over unpaid wages broke out among Carthage's mercenaries after the war. Despite being victorious at first, Carthage used hard tactics to put an end to the uprising. Carthage, led by Hamilcar Barca, concentrated on fortifying its military and economic foothold in Iberia, laying the groundworks for the upcoming wars with Rome. Both Rome and Carthage were profoundly impacted by the First Punic War, which also set a stage for future battles between the two powers and altered the balance of power in the Western Mediterranean. The Second Punic War was a fierce campaign against Rome that was started by Hannibal's daring invasion of Hispania and Carthage's submission to war reparations. Italy was thrown into chaos by Hannibal's march through Hispania and across the Alps, but Rome's perseverance and smart delaying strategies, most famously supported by Quintus Fabius Maximus Verrucus, finally caused Carthage to lose the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. The Carthage's military power was essentially eliminated when it was compelled to give up territory and agree to strict conditions. Following Hannibal's Carthaginian army siege and conquest of Saguntum in 219 BC, the war spread to various parts of Italy, Iberia, Africa, and other regions. Hannibal defeated the Romans in a number of significant battles, including the ones in Ticinus, Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, thanks to his creative strategies, which included his well-known crossing of the Alps. Along with major naval battles, the war featured diplomatic maneuvers as well. Two examples of these were the alliances Rome and Carthage established with different states and cities. Rome was forced by Hannibal's presence in Italy to employ the Fabian tactic of avoiding direct conflict, which helped slow down Hannibal's advance, but infuriated certain Roman factions. The war went beyond Italy to areas such as Iberia, where Hasdrubal, the brother of Hannibal, faced Roman resistance but held his own until his final defeat. Rome and Carthage fought for dominance in Sicily, resulting in significant incidents like the siege of Syracuse and the conquest of important cities. Rome's resounding victory at the end of the war was made possible by Publius Cornelius Scipio, also known as Scipio Africanus, and Hannibal's defeat at the Battle of Zama. Carthage was subject to severe restrictions as a result of the terms of the peace treaty, which established Roman dominance in the Mediterranean. All things considered, the Second Punic War altered the military and political climate in the ancient Mediterranean and cemented Rome's hegemony over the area. Rome's first overseas conquest, involving Sicily, Hispania, and Africa, came about as a result of the Punic Wars. Rome gained renown in the ancient world and established its dominance in the Western Mediterranean as a result of these victories. But the wars also brought corruption, greed, and dependency on foreign slave labor to Rome, which aggravated social unrest and economic inequality within the Republic. Rome was experiencing internal conflicts, as it demonstrated in its victories, driven by the widening gap between the wealthy patricians and the lower-income plebeians. Rome came out of the Punic Wars as a strong imperial power, ready to influence the path of ancient history, despite difficulties presented by internal disputes and the external threats. During the Punic Wars, the military forces of Rome and Carthage were distinguished by their unique compositions and tactics. Roman legions, which were made up of both cavalry and infantry, were the foundation of Roman military might. Lighter skirmishers provided support for each legion, which was composed of infantry who were heavily armored and armed with swords and javelins. The annual consuls who oversaw the combined Roman and allied forces were in charge of Roman military affairs. The makeup and caliber of the Carthaginian military forces varied. Foreign mercenaries made up the majority of the Carthaginian forces, with the Carthaginian citizens serving in the army mainly during direct threats to Carthage itself. There were infantry, cavalry, and specialist units like war elephants and slingers among these mercenaries. Garrison duty, land blockades, surprise attacks, and the use of elephants in combat were all common components of the Carthaginian military strategy. These battles between two ancient superpowers made a significant contribution to the history of warfare by demonstrating the military might, cunning, and the fortitude of both Rome and Carthage. Because of the ongoing tensions, the Third Punic War broke out in 149, ultimately resulting in Carthage destruction. The Third Punic War began as a result of Carthage's inability to accept its subservient status after a period of humiliation. Despite early resistance, Carthage was ultimately overrun by Rome's relentless assaults, which resulted in Scipio Aemilianus' complete destruction of the city in 146 BC. Rome seized control of the area, completing its conquest of Africa and establishing its dominance as an imperial power. Carthage was completely destroyed in 146 BC as a result of the Third Punic War. The people of the city were either slaughtered or sold into slavery, and the city's lands were incorporated in the Roman province of Africa. From its founding to its height of power, Rome's journey is a story of conquest, diplomacy, and cultural assimilation. Rome's history started with the modest beginnings of a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River and the vast empire that ruled the Mediterranean region. According to legend, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a wolf, established the city on Palatine Hill and laid the foundation of the Roman civilization. The foundation for the following republic was laid by the monarchy, which had renowned rulers like Tarquin the Proud and Romulus. Roman history went through a major shift when the country passed from a monarchy to a republic, which brought in a period of political invention and social transformation. Rome's future greatness was made possible by the creation of sophisticated legal and institutional framework, the separation of powers between patricians and plebeians, and the Senate as a governing body. Through a combination of military might and strategic alliances, the Republic of Rome expanded its territory and prospered during internal challenges and external conquests. Rome established itself as a dominant force in the area with the conquest of Italy and the battles against Pyrrhus of Epirus, but the great conflict with Carthage would ultimately determine Rome's fate. The Punic Wars, which took place on land and sea, put both civilization's strength and power to the test. From the courageous actions of Hannibal crossing the Alps to the triumphs of Scipio Africanus at Zama, Rome outmatched Carthage, established its dominance over the western Mediterranean and allowing it to spread even further in the upcoming centuries. Rome dominated the ancient world as the sole superpower in its region by the end of the 3rd century BC. The history of the ancient world was formed by its victories and defeats, wars and conquests. However, as Rome brought in a new era of prosperity and expansion, the seeds of future conflicts and crises were planted, indicating the challenges that future generations would have to overcome. In the next video, we will talk about the rise of Julius Caesar, Octavianus Augustus, and other important figures from the Roman Empire's golden age as we continue our exploration of its history.